democratic politics. Um, but you really, in terms of New Jersey, have created this seismic change in terms of treatment over incarceration. And today we're sitting here, and there are literally thousands of people in New Jersey state prisons, and there's 2 million people all across America, um, sitting, standing, worshiping, fearing in prisons. And would it be possible for whether it's the Republican Governors Association or your leadership to talk about changing the presumption from incarceration to treatment, and to do that as a matter of state by state and national federal law?
Sure. Listen, I think first of all, it's about individual leadership. I mean, because groups put out white papers all the time, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents, whoever they are, and white papers are fine and they're nice, and sometimes we actually even read them. But it's about individuals taking political risk in leadership. And I'll tell you how I talk about this issue to my fellow conservative friends. I'm pro-life, and I believe strongly in the sanctity of life, and as do many of my fellow conservative governors. And I say to them, it's great to be pro-life, but you need to be pro-life after they get out of the womb too. We have to be pro-life all the way along. And sometimes life presents us with challenges to being pro-life. People make mistakes. People anger us. People do things that we can't understand. And it becomes harder at that moment to be pro-life. But if we believe in the sanctity of life, then we need to believe in how life is precious for every moment that God gives us. Not only the really good moments, but the really tough moments too.
Amen.
And so, if in fact we believe life is precious, and I do, then the life of the drug-addicted teenager who's been arrested for the 6th time is just as precious as the lives of any one of my children. The life of the 45-year-old lawyer who is addicted to prescription drugs and alcohol is just as precious as any one of the prosecutors who ever worked for me. The life of the 65-year-old woman who has spent her entire life helping others and then falls victim to alcohol or drug abuse is just as precious as the life of my own father. Now, these are things that we need to stand up for. And it's hard to stand up for them. But if you're going to be pro-life, you got to be pro-life the entire journey, not just the beginning of it. And so I think if you talk to conservative leaders and say to them, yes, there is a class of people who deserve to be incarcerated. And whether you're conservative or moderate or liberal, whatever you call yourself, you don't want violent people on the street.
No.
Nobody does. It doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in. You don't want a violent person armed on your street that may hurt you or your children or your other loved ones or your neighbors. All right? But we also have to understand that there is a class of people who will benefit much more from us reaching out a helping hand to them and understanding that we're all flawed and we all make mistakes and we all at some moment in our lives need help. I just recently lost a dear friend to alcohol and drug abuse. And I could tell you that as we all stood around at his wake at 52 years old, that all of us were, in a sense, at the same moment of both disbelief and inevitability. I said to my wife that night, is it possible to be completely stunned and not the least bit surprised at the same time? And I could tell you from just having experienced this, it is absolutely possible. I knew we all tried to reach out to this friend and help him for nearly a decade. And he continued not to be able to deal with the ravage that this addiction did to him. And at the same time, though, I was completely stunned that a guy who had been a dear friend of mine for 30 years was laying there in that coffin because he couldn't deal with the illness that he had. When I tell you, everybody, this can happen to everybody, when I talk about this over and over at town hall meetings, it's because it can, and it does every day. And so I don't believe this is a conservative or moderate or liberal issue. I don't believe this is a Republican or Democrat issue. Because let me tell you, I know as many drug-addicted Republicans as I know drug-addicted Democrats, okay? It just is what it is. Because alcohol, prescription drugs, heroin, cocaine, they don't ask you for your party registration card when the drug dealer's selling it to you. And so, to me, I do think we can do this, and I talk to other governors about it all the time, about what we're doing here. And I don't proselytize about it, because governors all have pretty big egos, and they all think they got the whole thing figured out anyway. So you gotta be very careful about the way you do it, but you just talk about it in terms of the success we're having. The lower recidivism rate we're already seeing in New Jersey because of the efforts that we're making. And any of you, go talk to any of these judges who preside over drug court. These folks become apostles.
Yep, Judge Venerable.
Right? They become apostles. I know Judge Filko in Passaic County is a law school classmate of mine. He believes so deeply in this now, and I don't think he thought about it much beforehand because he didn't have a lot of personal experience with it.
Yeah.
But when he sees the lives he's changed, Governor, it's extraordinary. And so, my view on this is I'm not asking anybody to take a blind leap of faith. I'm saying look at the results. And the results, both from a humanities perspective and from a fiscal perspective, are undeniable. And if that's the case, what the hell are we waiting for? What are we waiting for to get this done? So that's why we're pushing as hard as we are to do it.
Okay. And last question is, this is Monday and Tuesday was Passover, Pesach, and today is Holy Thursday, and tomorrow's Good Friday and Easter Sunday. And so for people of faith, I mean, part of what we believe in is redemption, is the ability of second chances. And I appreciate, because of what you believe in your faith, and we're pretty far afield from that whole notion of second chances. I mean, if we're locking up 25% of the world's population, how do we morally and ethically, as a country, as what I believe to be a good people, and the mayor talked about driving past prisons and our indifference, how do we ignite, I mean, this is pretty special today, but how do we ignite a fervor, a moral fervor, to say that we need to do better as a matter of conscience, as a people, as a nation?
Well, I mean, I think to do it, it can't just be our political leaders who are involved in doing it. It's got to be everybody. If you want to ignite a moral blaze, then the morality of our society is determined by all of us. Not just by the people you elect and put into office, not just by the people who stand in the pulpit or in the temple or in the mosque and preach to you on your days of observation. It is all of us who give forth an attitude. Again, I go back to what Gene said, about the friends on the way in and the friends on the way out. Why is that? It is in part, I think, because we believe that's what's socially expected of us. That we're expected to kind of give the stiff arm to the person who's been in trouble and gone to jail. And that's why are you associating with that person? Don't you understand that they've, been to jail? Well, that's why I think if the kind of broader movement that you're referring to in your question has to be done by a broader swath of society. I could say as much as I want to say and hope that I move people. That's part of my job, is to use the pulpit that I have to be able to try to speak about the things that I believe are important and to move people. But I'm not under the illusion for a moment that I can move everybody. There are some people who their ears are closed to me. Maybe because they're very busy with other parts of their life. Maybe because they're focused on other things regarding their family and they don't focus on what's going on in the public. Maybe because they just don't like me. You know, I mean, it's possible. I know you find it hard to believe, but it is possible. It is possible. So you can't just count on one person or one group of people to do it because you don't know who you're uniquely positioned to reach. You don't know until you try and until you take the chance to put yourself out there to folks. And so what I try to say to people all the time who come to me, and I'm sure the governor understands this too, because he had this job. I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say to me, Governor, why don't you do something about fill in the blank? And they're emotional, they're heated up about it. And like the first year or so that I was governor, I didn't quite know how to react to this. So I would try to be really earnest, say, oh, okay, I will try to do something about that. Then after about a year of it, I said, well, I got to qualitatively listen to this, right? And I can't tell you now in the last 4 years how many times I look at people and go, why don't you do something about it? And they'll go, well, you're the governor. I go, yeah, okay. I'm the governor, but that doesn't mean I'm in charge of everything. Why don't you do something about it? Why don't you tell me what you think I should do about it instead of just coming to me and saying, hey, do something about it? I can't tell you the looks on people's faces when I do that. They're like, wait a second, that's not the way this is supposed to work. We have this role playing down. See, I'm the constituent. I come up to you and yell at you. You look chastened and upset, and then you say you'll do something about it. Then you never will, and I'll never see you again. All right? Well, I'm trying to change that part of the dialogue too, because people need to understand they all have a responsibility for this. It's not just mine; it's yours too. So, the kind of broad movement that you're talking about, which I think would be extraordinarily helpful in changing this, because the other thing you know about politicians is that what we like to do is what will get us elected. And so if you, yeah, I knew you'd like that. And the fact is that if we turn around the societal attitude that anyone who does anything wrong needs to be incarcerated, then we don't see them anymore, then we don't have to think about it. If you start putting the pressure on us to say, well, no. That's not fulfilling your responsibility as a public official. Fulfilling your responsibility is trying to make sure that justice is done, that everybody gets a second chance, that people who deserve it and earn it get one. Believe me,